Hello, everyone. I'm going to continue reading Still Foolin' by Billy Chris. I'm going to read 3 more chapters of this book. But before I get to that, I want to do a truth of the fact again, truth of reality, however you want to put it. I'm a rebel. I'm not watching the fucking Super Bowl. So anyway, truth of the fact. People say the GI Bill goes to military's education. Yes and no. Here's a truth of the fact. When it comes to military members coming back home from the Iraq War, and ones coming home from the Afghanistan War, and ones who are not re-enlisting whatsoever, part of the GI Bill does go to their education, but the other half doesn't. The other half of the GI Bill is supposed to go to the soldiers' medical care, housing, and jobs. What I mean by that is the GI Bill was essentially created so when soldiers came back home from combat, they would have a fucking job. Do they have jobs? No, they don't.
James, what's your language?
And here's the truth of the fact as well.
You're a lot more effective when you sound respectable.
There is more homeless veterans in this country than there is anywhere else in the world. If you look at China, Germany, and all the other countries around the world that have their militaries, guess what? Their soldiers are taken care of. Their government takes care of them. You know why? Because the government treats their military members as they should. And those military members are treated with respect, and they're given the medical care they need. They're given the jobs they're promised. They're given the housing they're promised, and they're given the education they're promised. What's the best the United States could do? Oh, we give them an education, but that's about it. That's about it. You know what, folks? It's like this country does not even care about its own veterans. We don't. You have these so-called patriots, these Tea Party knuckleheads, these like fucking batshit crazy people. You know what I'm talking about? The people who say, we're gonna take back America and make it great again, while they're doing a prospector march and shooting their guns up in the air. You know those types of people? They're not true patriots. They are not true patriots. They're false patriots. And I'm calling bullshit on them. They aren't true patriots. You know why? A true patriot criticizes his or her country and says, this needs to change. That's what a true patriot does. A true patriot doesn't say, there's no flaws with America. Only a false patriot does that, not a real patriot. I'm a real patriot. I'm patriotic, but guess what? I call out the flaws in my country. I say the things that people don't want to hear on YouTube. You know why? Because everyone's too afraid to speak it. You have girls and guys who talk about relationship issues. Guess what? Your relationship is not as important as the politics that affects your life. That's just the truth. And I speak about the stuff that people don't want to speak about. I'm not the only one, but I'm outspoken than most. I have over 700 videos on my YouTube page. Some of it is karaoke videos because I like to do fun videos every now and then. But for the most part, it's serious videos. And I've been doing it for a long while now. So with that being said, keep that truth of the fact in your head. We treat our military members like they're yesterday's garbage. That's just the truth. If we really want to treat our military members with the most respect, donate to the actual foundations that will help them, like Wounded Warriors Foundation. That actually helps the veterans with their medical bills, and it helps them with the housing, and it helps them with finding jobs. Wounded Warriors Foundation helps them. And every now and then you'll see a commercial on TV about it, but you don't hear any of the politicians, these so-called real patriots, talking about it. You only hear the politicians, these corrupt-minded politicians, only using the veterans as a political power play so they could get their constituents who are dumb as a potato to vote for them. Anyway, that's the end of truth of the fact. Now let's get to the Bill of Crystal still fooling them. Growing up Crystal. You know how angry kids get? You know how angry kids will say sometimes, I didn't ask to be born. Well, you did. My mother used to tell me, your brothers took hours to arrive, not you, 30 minutes tops. Around my 8th month, you started kicking a lot, and I thought I could hear you saying, let's go, I'm breaking your water. On March 14th, 1948, at 7:36 a.m., I arrived at the doctor's hospital in Manhattan, overlooking Gracie Mansion in the East River. I am the youngest of Jack and Helen's 3 boys. My brother Richard, known as Rip, is 2 years older than I am. And Joel, my big brother, literally, he's 6'2". He's 6 years older. We lived on Davidson Avenue in the Bronx until the lure of the suburbs seduced my parents, who had a dream to own their own house with a lawn the size of a toupee. My folks followed my grandparents, who were personally, perpetually not well, and whose doctor had advised that the salty sea air of Long Beach, Long Island, a lonely, quaint beach town, would do wonders for them. Not true. They were always sick, and nothing metal they owned, including my grandfather's hip, rusted quickly. My grandmother, Susie Gabler, was a large woman of Russian heritage, weighing in at over 200 pounds, and my grandpa Julius was a diminutive, cranky Austrian who had twin albino brothers, tiny little pink Jewish elves, and we called the lab rats. Very rare, they would fetch a grand sum of eBay today. They usually wore woolly 3-piece suits, and when they stood together, they looked like salt and pepper shakers. Grandma, who loved to laugh, was the dominant force in the family and actually is credited on Wikipedia with inventing guilt. For instance, she once asked my mom to take her to her doctor's appointment, and when my mom said she couldn't, Grandma responded, I bought you your house for you. She also put the fear of God in me, literally. If any of us did something she felt was wrong, she'd tell us, God will punish you. One time when I was about 6, she told me not to skip. I did anyhow and fell, and she said, see, God punished you. Terrifying. Grandpa was slowed by arthritis and crankets. He and I understood each other. He was in pain a lot, and I was pissed that I was short. Yes, I had a case of little guy's disease for a while. It ended about a week ago when I finally understood that my big spurt had already happened. Nonetheless, growing up Crystal was a great time. My dad was the manager of a popular record store in New York City called the Commodore Music Shop, which was owned by my grandpa Julius and his sons Milt and Danny. Milt had transformed the place from a hardware store into the center of jazz in Manhattan. When he got rid of the light bulbs and whisk brooms, Grandpa was peddling and created Commodore Records, the first independent jazz label of its time, and sold hot jazz records that he produced himself. When Milt left to become the executive producer at Decca Records, my dad took over as manager and became the go-to guy for jazz enthusiasts. He also produced jazz concerts on the weekends at a place called the Central Plaza on 2nd Avenue in Manhattan. Dad turned all of us onto jazz, and its great stars were family friends. It was also Dad who saw how much I loved being funny and would let me stay up on school nights to watch the great comedians of the 50s on television. It was Dad who brought home comedy albums from the store so I could listen and learn. And it was my mom and dad whom I loved most to make laugh. My mom was our rock. Dad worked 6 days a week at 2 jobs, so much of our time was spent with her. She was funny and graceful woman who could sing a tap dance and was always the life of the party. In her 20s, she worked at Macy's where she was in the store's theater group, and she was often the voice of Minnie Mouse in the Thanksgiving Day parade. Uncle Milt was the celebrity of the family, a force in the music industry. He produced more than 30 records and sold over 1 million copies, including Rock Around the Clock. He worked with the stars such as Sammy Davis Jr., Bing Crosby, and Nat King Cole. But it was my Uncle Burns, my dad's brother, who was the actual star to us. A large, unself-conscious Saint Bernard of a man. He just loved to be funny, and he was always the center of attention. He would also get us to perform with him, and we loved to perform. My brothers and I would do skits of our extended family, usually memorizing a bit we seen on Steve Allen's show or Ernie Kovac's brilliant program. Joel was fast and razor sharp. Rip was the singer and was personally, and I was simply nuts. The Jerry Lewis of the three of us. I couldn't wait for the living room to fill up with relatives so I could get up on the coffee table and imitate them. When we go to a relative's home on a holiday visit, my mom would make sure to pack our props and anything else my brothers and I needed for our act. She was our test audience, our out-of-town tryout before we brought it into the big room. During school shows, I drove my classmates crazy, wandering off the script and improvising if a funny thought occurred to me. I was the loudmouth, class clown type of guy. I was never one of those kids who was simply on, but I loved attention. I guess when you're the little brother of two charismatic older brothers, it's a natural craving. I also had other cravings. It was in the wings of the third grade play, and I not only kissed a girl for the first time, but had my first erection. I knew that what I was doing was wrong, which probably made it more exciting. I was scared and confused about what was happening in my pants. Then I thought, oh no, is God punishing me by stiffing me? I made a mental note in the future that when I got an erection, not to think about my grandma. At my 20th high school reunion, I saw the recipient of the first exchange of fluids, and she introduced me to Lois, her mannish and unsmiling partner. I took my first aside and asked, was that kiss bad? I've written and talked about my hometown a great deal, but for new readers, I must once again say that Long Beach was the perfect place to grow up. With its pristine white sands, beaches, and the pounding Atlantic on one side and the serene Reynolds Channel on the other. We took our bikes everywhere, and the 2 miles of boardwalk offered a paradise of games of chance, like skee ball and automatic poker, a Ferris wheel, a batting cage, and a miniature golf. There was an abandoned 3-story concrete lookout tower that had been used in World War II to search the sea for enemy submarines. As teenagers, we'd sneak in and smoke a cigarette, grab a stolen kiss, or make water balloons out of condoms and drop them on unsuspecting passerby. The Laurel Theater was the old-fashioned movie palace with the red velvet seats and a balcony where petting was permanent. On Saturdays, I go to the matinee and watch the Three Stooges and Green Hornet shorts that were preceded the main attraction. Beside the 5 ball fields, this was my escape. Walking into the darkened theater was akin to walking into Yankee Stadium, which I did for the first time on May 30th, 1956. Dad took Joel, Rip, and me to our first game. Louis Armstrong had given Dad his box for the game and even arranged for us to get our program signed by the greatest star in baseball, Mickey Mantle. Mantle hit the most spectacular home run in Yankee history that afternoon, coming within inches of being the first ball hit completely out of the park. From that day on, all I really wanted to be was a Yankee who was also a comedian. Someday both dreams would come true. Our house at 549 East Park was small, with 2 bedrooms and a den. It was a 2-family dwelling, with another family living in the apartment above us. The main drag of the town, Park Avenue, had a mall running down the center, with traffic on each side heading east and west. We played football and baseball on that bumpy, uneven grass strip and figured that if you could field a ground ball on it, you could play anywhere. The crystals were always out there. Often, I organized tackle football games with my junior high friends, and cars would pull over to watch us. When they installed streetlights, we were able to hold night games. I loved when it snowed heavily. Once the flurries began to fall, the phone calls started. The mall 8 o'clock. Soon we had a dozen kids playing football under the lights, reflected by the beautiful falling snow. Mom would heat up a big pot of milk on the stove, and at halftime, everyone came in for hot chocolate. The boiling milk lent its name to our games. Munchkies. Munchkies was what she called the gunky skin that rose on top of the boiling milk. When Mom would skim it off and throw it in the sink, she would yell, Munchkies! After a while, when the snowstorm started, we all have to do was call another and say, Munchkies! And hang up. Then we'd all meet on the mall at 8. Our house was around the corner from my elementary school, known simply as East School. Chuck Foolin, the head of physical education, took my crazy energy and channeled it into tumbling. He taught me that form was crucial. Even as a fourth or fifth grader, I understood how my body should move, and I worked hard to be graceful. He would open the gym before and after school, and Rip and I started to excel in athletics. Mr. Poland would also hold gym nights and invite parents to watch the kids do the floor exercise routines he taught us. From a running start, I was able to dive over 5 or 6 kids laying on their backs, shoulder to shoulder on a mat. Each time a new kid would take his place, the audience would cheer, and someone, usually my mom, would yell, Go get him! It was exciting, and frankly, I love performing in front of a crowd. Performing is the key word of my life. I was also a band geek. I played the clarinet in the band and the marching band. I wanted to play trumpet or the drums, but Rip had said, pick the clarinet and we can play duets together. I looked at him so much that I agreed. I looked up to him so much that I agreed, stupidly thinking you had to have the same instruments to play a duet. The cool musicians who would stop by our house taught us some Dixieland licks. Pee Wee Russell, a gentle, slight man, played clarinet with a haunting, breathy tone. He is still considered one of the great soloists. He advised me to always play Tease It Out, saying that young players tend to blow too hard. When I was 10, I actually got to sit in on when the Saints go marching in with a group of Dixieland stars. I loved it. And for the first time, I acted like I was a jazz man. I wore a beret and sunglasses and borrowed money from my father. I had a high-pitched voice until I was 10 and my tonsils were removed. Suddenly, I was a Pavarotti. It took 2 weeks for my throat to heal. And during my time away from school, my class was taught the basics of algebra. When I came back, I was lost. Everyone was so far ahead, and I just didn't grasp the concepts. I never really recovered from that. To this day, the only math I can do is figuring out someone's batting average, especially if they are 0 for 300. I do remember puberty, though I'm not sure actually I went through. It didn't get awkward. It I I didn't get awkward. I didn't get a mustache. Not many pimples, no hair on my chest or legs, which led me to believe I was part Navajo. I stayed small until I was 20, and right before my bar mitzvah, I stayed small until I was 12, and right before my bar mitzvah, planning started. We went to Dr. Griboff, the family physician, who also Don Rickles' cousin, which is not why we chose him. With Rip and Joel having already reached normal size and beyond, my mom worried that I was not growing properly. So Griboff x-rayed my growth plates, and we waited nervously in his office for the results. When he sat down behind his desk, he said the words that sealed my Yankee fate. Maybe 5'8". How the hell did this happen? Joel was over 6 feet, Rip 5'10", and the only thing keeping me from being a lab mouse was pink eyes. I was devastated. We need to stimulate your growth hormones, the doctor said, so he gave me these pills that were supposed to make me hungry. The theory being, eat more, grow more. Well, I ate more, didn't grow more, I just got fat, bursting through the series of Robert Hall suits that were to be my bar mitzvah assemble. I gained 19 pounds in 2 months and grew 1 inch. I was in real danger of going from the quickly little second baseman to the chubby kid catcher. I ate everything on everyone else's plate. What's yours is mine was my motto. Rip nicknamed me, "Are you gonna finish that?" I just couldn't stop eating. And they had to take me off the pills because I turned into a little white shark. So when the big day came in my bar mitzvah, I rolled around. So when the big day of the bar mitzvah rolled around, so did I. My synagogue was a Reformed temple, which means the service was half in Hebrew and half in Latin. Not only was I the last one in my family to get bar mitzvahed, I was the last one in my Hebrew school class, which means I had seen at least 20 services and knew what was coming. The bar mitzvah boy is basically the rabbi for the day. He conducts the service, leads the congregation in prayer, and finally, he gets a chance to read from the Torah itself. which is the most dramatic moment in the show. I mean, service. After reading, there's a moment in every service that is truly emotional. In our temple, the lights dimmed, heavenly organs played, the ark containing the Torah was closed, and then the rabbi called the bar mitzvah boy over. As the music reached a crescendo, the rabbi, the most learned and trusted man in the Jewish community, would lean over and whisper some sacred, poignant, and holy words to the chosen one. And then seconds later, the 13-year-old man would burst into tears. As the music swelled, he would leave the rabbi, come off the stage into the audience and hug his mother and grandparents. Then he bound back on stage like a Tony Award winner, which I am. Wait, did that slip? Hug his father. Women weren't allowed on the stage, and returned to his seat. Wiping the tears from his cheeks, it was the dramatic conclusion to the service. And as soon as we would all be eating stuffed cabbage and greeting relatives who would spit Swedish meatballs on the boy's mohair suit as they handed him a Jewish war bond that cost $18. At my friends' bar mitzvahs, I would ask them what the rabbi had said to try to find out what magical insight from 5,721 years of suffering had been given to them on that day, but no one would divulge a word. They would either say, "We can't tell you," or "You'll find out when it's your turn." Even Joel and Rip, my very own brothers, refused to tell me. Finally, March 25th, 1961 arrived. My moment. I had never been better, even though I was standing on an apple crate, and so I could be seen, a very sturdy apple crate, as I was still wider than I was tall. I did a tight 20 to open. Had the crowd standing, sitting, reading responsibly, nodding, smiling. I led them in silent prayer, did my blessings, even chanted a few, gave a really strong speech that advocated a ban on fossil fuels and equality in marriage. Then I was called to the ark, read from the ancient Torah, and the big stuff was done. After the Torah was dressed and put back on the ark, the rabbi motioned me over. The music started, and my heart began to pound. This is it. I was about to drink from the cup of knowledge. Wearing his home uniform of a black cloth robe and a puffy satin yarmulke, Yeah, yarmulke. He put his learned aging hands on my shoulders, leaned in close, and with that harrowing and pickled breath of his, whispered the words I was sure had come from God's lips to my ears. Count to 10, go into the audience, kiss your mother and grandparents to come back on stage. What? 5,000 years of anguish and suffering and having the tip of my penis cut off in my grandmother's living room, and all I get to guide me through life is count to 10 and kiss your relatives? I started to cry. That's it? I whispered. Yes, and I expect you to be in confirmation class Monday and don't discuss this with anyone, he replied. And the look in his eye that said, tell anyone and I'll cut the rest of your penis off. Given how I felt about my penis, I haven't said a word to anybody until now. Junior high was a disaster. The 4th elementary schools in Long Beach all emptied into the junior high. My class had more than 500 students in it. I was cut out of my comfort zone. Plus, Rip was such a star that lots of teachers put pressure on me to be as good as he was, and I didn't think that was possible. I'm still not sure what happened. I was a smart kid, good grades, test scores, the whole bit, but I let things distract me. By things, I mean 2 things on the front of girls. I went on the small rampage. This girl, that girl, on the phone, meeting them at the Laurel Theater. My first makeout sessions, copying my first feels. All of that stopped me from keeping my eye on the ball. Actually, my eyes were on my balls, as that became a hobby as well. Once I knew God wasn't stiffing me, I was home. So as my erections went up, my grades went down. My self-esteem went down, and I floundered. If they gave grades for masturbating, you'd be reading a book by another Einstein. I settled into life as a C plus B minus student. As I started high school, I couldn't stop thinking about 2 things: baseball and performing. All right, and tits. So 3 things. Maybe that was puberty after all. Performing stand-up in high school, a variety of revenue called the swinging show that spring, was a turning point. My first big crowd had almost 1,000 people in the audience. I rewrote a routine from a Jonathan Winters album. He was my favorite at the time, and I was a takeoff on the takeoff of the Frankenstein movie, with the scientist building this great monster. And at the end of the routine, he calls UCLA and tells the coach his baseball star is ready. In my version, I was the scientist and turned the monster into a baseball player for my high school. I was 14, a 14-year-old sophomore, and I didn't think it was stealing. I just did it word for word in front of an audience. I executed it perfectly, and it just killed. Well, of course it did. It was Jonathan's material. Dad was there, and taking a bow and seeing him smile up at me from his seat is something I will never forget because I only got to see that once. He died suddenly the next fall, and my childhood came to a screeching halt. I never felt young again. That night he died, my girlfriend had dumped me and I was moping around. He was frustrated with me. I got fresh, and that was the last time we spoke. I thought I had something to do with his death, which was a huge burden. I drifted through my junior year of high school with Joel and Rip away at college. I was It was just my grieving mom and me alone in the house. I never felt I could have a weak moment in front of her, which frankly was exhausting, and I held in a lot more pain than I was able to bear. Making the high school basketball team gave me a place to go after school, and though I didn't play much, I loved and needed the camaraderie of my teammates. I had a good I had a good varsity baseball season, hitting over 300. I did another strong performance in the swing show, but I was missing my dad and dealing with my mom. I felt a little stronger during my senior year of high school, though the haze of sadness still blurred my vision. Mom had pulled herself together somewhat and had gotten a job, which at the age of 50 was a major accomplishment. She was determined to make sure we all graduate from college. I got the lead in the school show and won the intramural wrestling championship, and along with it, my nickname. I was all of 122 pounds. The title match in front of the recluse crowd in our packed gym was scoreless into the third and final period when my opponent deliberately gouged me in the eyes furiously. I reversed him for the point, then got on my shoulders into his stomach and drove him off the mat and threw him into the scoreboard. A portable blackboard which fell over and shattered. My great friend David Sherman stood up and yelled, "You brutal!" The crowd started chanting, "Brutal, brutal, brutal." From then on, Brutal was my nickname. When I checked into a baseball game and got out on the floor, the fans chanted, "Brutal, brutal, brutal." At 5'7", with a buzz cut, I was already typecast as for that moniker, and you have to wonder what my opponents were thinking. During my last season of high school baseball, I was the captain of the team, hit 346 and even belted my first home run against Kohan Calhoun high school pitcher, who was later drafted by the Hudson Astros. I took a high inside fastball and turned on it. It sailed over the fence at the 320-foot sign in the left center field. As I approached the first base and saw it clear the wall, I yelled, "Oh, big!" When I rounded third, my coach, Gene Fari, was waiting for me.
James, lower your voice.
He shook my hand and whispered, "Don't say that again." He was right, but I was so damn happy. This May, my buddy Neil Kushid introduced me. That May, my buddy Neil Kushid introduced me to a young man named Lou Alcindor. Neil and Lou were classmates at Power Memorial Academy in Manhattan. At over 7 feet tall, Lou was the #1 high school basketball player in the country and was on his way to UCLA, changing his name to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. When he became one of the NBA's all-time greats, we got to be friends, and Lou came over quite a lot and loved our family's connections to the world of jazz and its African-American musicians. One beautiful spring day, Lou, Neil, and I decided to play some hoops at the local basketball court in Long Beach. We walked on the boardwalk towards the center of town. Lou was wearing a UCLA t-shirt, a Panama hat, and round red John Lennon sunglasses. He looked at me and said, "You're not cool enough to wear these." He gave me his red sunglasses and Neil the hat. We arrived at the famous courts at Central School. Larry Brown, now a Hall of Fame basketball coach, had made these courts his home when he attended Long Beach High. College and high school players all over came to Central School on Saturdays to play against one another. The games were in full swing as the three of us sauntered onto the courts. 5'8", Neil in his wide-brimmed hat, trying to look bad. 5'7", me with my red glasses, trying to walk the line like I was 5'6", 6'5". And the most famous 7'2" high school athlete in America, the players just stare at us as I uttered, "We have next." We didn't lose the game until we got hungry, and Lewis said, "That's enough, thanks guys." Neil put on his hat, and I put on my red sunglasses, and we walked out. On the way, we had come in. In June, I was handed my diploma. After an anxious summer, saying goodbye to my friends and family, and all I have ever known, I got on the plane and headed to Marshall University in Huntington, West Virginia. Sitting alone on the plane as I flew south was a strange feeling. Not unlike how I feel six now, unlike how I feel 65. How did this happen so soon? I had never been away to camp, but rarely even slept over a friend's house, and now I was on my way to my first year of college. After a harrowing landing at the Huntington airport, the runaway was just over the lip of the mountaintop. I arrived at the Hotel Pritchard, which would be my dormitory. The school had taken 2 floors of that hotel because lack of dorm space. My roommate wasn't in yet, and our bunk beds weren't even assembled. So that night, I slept on the mattress on the floor. After my collect call home to say I made it, words I barely got out because of the lump in my throat, I walked into town to look around and get a bite to eat at the White Pantry, a nearby burger joint. I was wearing a t-shirt and my Star David necklace peeked over it. I ordered a cheeseburger and the counterman said they were closed, which they weren't. The place was packed. He pointed to the sign on the wall, said, "We preserve the right to refuse service to anyone." He motioned to my Star David, and I stood up and walked out. Got a job as a DJ on WMUL, the campus radio station, and had 2 shows of my own called Just Jazz and another called Nightlife, which I did with a partner named Tom Tanner. We'd be on the late at night in Huntington, and after a while, people started listening. It was a way for me to perform and be funny, and it was just like I was home doing bits on our tape recorder with my brothers. I was hoping to be the second baseman for the Thundering Herd. But the school had canceled the freshman baseball program, so that dream would have to wait until my sophomore year. I was very shy, didn't really date anyone, and even taught a Sunday school theater class at the local synagogue. My roommate, Mike Hughes, was a great guy. We were a solid pair, and though he was in his mid-20s and I was only 17, we made up some phony proof of age so I could get a beer now and then. One day, I was talking to some of the guys in the dorm about Lou Alcindor, and they doubted that I knew him. I bet a bunch of them $5 each. So I wrote a letter to Lou, care of UCLA. And in a short time, I got a letter back, which earned me a dorm cred, and $75. Then I told Mike that I could sneeze at will. I had a chemical reaction to dark chocolate. that can cause me to sneeze uncontrollably. Up until then, my record was 50 sneezes before my nose bled. Mike thought that this could be great fun. So we got a group of guys together in the rec room, and they all threw in $5 into a hat, and I ate a large bar of dark chocolate. I sat in the middle of a jammed room, and everyone was staring at me. Within 5 minutes, someone in the crowd said, "Hey, his ears are getting red," which to me meant, "Gentlemen, start your engines." The bet was 50 sneezes or better. Achoo! Came the first. 1, said Mike, and he was holding the pot. Achoo! 2, said Mike. As the count grew, so did the amount of people in the room, all calling out the number as I sneezed away. I passed 35 easy, and guys threw more money into the hat. 48, 49, 50 sneezes. Still, not done, but exhausted. Somehow, I worked my way up to 64 before a trickle of blood hit my upper lip. I made $225 and a few new friends. I came home that summer and went to work as a counselor for my old teacher, Chuck Foolin, at a day camp he ran in at the Malibu Beach Club. One day while I was playing catch on the beach with a friend, this girl walked by. I followed her and we started talking and then dating. I was in love. And I knew that if I went back to Marshall, we never make it. Long distance relationships rarely work out. I didn't want to let that happen. I transferred to Nassau Community College, only 20 minutes from Long Beach. It's the best decision I've ever made. You know what? I'll read the other chapter tomorrow. Next chapter I will read, though, is Count to 10. Hope you guys enjoy.